All right, welcome back to part 2 of this video, creating an animated video, square animated video for social media or other places. So we'll get back into working with the red branded rectangle where all the type will go. So on that rectangle, I'm going to pull where it's visible over to about that 2.5-second mark. And I'm going to have that fade in as well. Thought it'd be a nice transition instead of it just showing up right away. And then I'll go over and set that opacity transition to 100%. It was starting out at 0. So we're kind of doing the reverse. We faded out the photographs, faded out the logo, but here we're fading in to full strength the red bar. But it's the same process. You just set a keyframe, set your opacity at 0 by first clicking on that little stopwatch next to opacity, moving your timeline indicator over and setting a new keyframe, and then increasing your opacity back to 100%, so it'll fade in. Notice here, if you don't like where everything is transitioning in and out, you can just grab the little keyframes and move them. You can click and drag and select multiple keyframes if you want, or you can hold your shift key down and click on them. When they're blue, they're active and they're ready to move. So you can see right now I'm just kind of playing around with how that rectangle, that red rectangle, fades in and out. It just fades in and where it does that. There's no magic here. It's just working with it until you get something that you think looks good and the viewer will follow. So now I'm going to set up my text, and I clicked on the type tool up there in the bar, and I'll set my typeface. I have a branded typeface, which is Georgia for this. Set it to white. You can see you can increase a lot of different things that you normally can, whether it be the type, the leading, the kerning, spacing. So I'm going to type in my first kind of headline from our orchard, enlarge it, and go to paragraph, and you can align it left, you can center it. So I'm going to work to position this, again, based on my comps. Here I'm finding where I want that, the text from the orchard to appear. I'm going to align it with a rectangle shape because they kind of go together. Same thing here, I'm going to have that fade in, so I set a keyframe first, set the opacity to 0. I'm just using the keyframes from the rectangle, so I put my timeline kind of indicator there on those, set a new keyframe, and have the text and the red rectangle fade in at the same time. Remember to save as you go along. So the scrubbing that you saw me doing there for the last minute or so was just trying to find the best place to have from the orchard the text that really goes with the picture of the apples, when to have that fade out. So I found a spot that I thought worked best, and that will fade out. But it will leave the red rectangle. Notice I didn't touch the red rectangle. That'll just stay solid for the remainder of the 30 seconds once that fades in. So the rest of this is really you're going to be watching me just adjusting it, scrubbing through, and adding the rest of the text to it. We have 3 headlines that we have, and the second one you'll see coming up here in a little bit. So now I just duplicated the type layer, and I'm going to change that to our second headline. Just like in most of the Adobe programs, you can hit the little I off to the left and turn that layer off so you can see what you're doing. So the first headline was from the orchard, the second headline to your table. So I set that up. Notice when I duplicated the layer that it brought along all the keyframes and the fades with it. So it reduces the amount of work you have to do. But obviously they're in the wrong place. So we'll have to move those around, and you'll watch me do that here. So I'll click and drag to select all of those, and they all move at the same time. So a lot less work we have to do to fade in and then fade back out because we duplicated that layer. Duplicating the layer again, moving it down. We'll hide that second layer to your table, and we'll add our third headline to help make a memory. This is a little bit larger, so I'm going to have to reduce this. There's more words, I should say. Just like in Illustrator or other programs, you can nudge these up and down, left and right with your arrow keys. So now we'll watch that fade in and fade back out. We'll have to change all of the keyframes. We'll just select them all by clicking and dragging a box around them and sliding them over. Now I'm just double checking everything, going back through, scrubbing through, see how everything transitions in and out. Here I'm going to add a second logo. I just like to do it this way so that I have 2 different layers in there. One will be used at the end. I can make this smaller, and this is going to be a logo that comes in at the end and kind of leaves the brand message with the audience, and also introduces the call to action, which you'll see in a little bit here where I put like at find local retailers. Same thing, if I want to have this fade in or out, I first set my timeline, my spot in the timeline with the timeline indicator there, and I click on the little stopwatch next to opacity in that layer, And that'll set the first keyframe, and then I just set additional keyframes and adjust the opacity, and it will help that fade in and out. And you see, as to help make a memory text fades out, the logo fades in. Thought that was a little bit early for it to fade in, so I grabbed both of those keyframes and moved them over just a bit. On here I wanted to help make a memory remain on the page or remain viewable a little bit longer too. That's why I grabbed the last two keyframes and pulled them apart from the first two keyframes that faded in. I found that when you play this at the very end, if you leave a couple of seconds for someone to read a short 3 to 5 word headline like this, I think that's good. If it's 1 second, it tends to be not enough for me. If you leave it for, maybe 3, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, that tends to be a little bit long. So that magic area is probably about, 2 to 3 seconds. So now I'm going to use my text tool again and set a new text box, and this will set a new layer. And this is where I'm going to put kind of the last call to action in the video. At fine local retailers, that'll be the call to action, hopefully getting them to go find the apples at their retailer. And I'm centering this text vertically and horizontally in that red bar. Just a reminder that throughout this whole video, I've been using the brand typefaces, the branded logo, the brand colors, so that everything looks like it goes together. If we were to do multiple videos for this client, social media videos, presentation videos, we'd want them all to look like they go together. So we use those brand elements. So now you see we're building kind of the final transition here into that logo fade in and the call to action. So we'll slowly scrub through and see how it looks. So now I'm going to render this. I'm going to click on the comp after I saved it, and I'm going to go to Export, Add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. Adobe Media Encoder is kind of a standalone program that helps you render or basically create your video. So you'll see I'll show you the settings in here. When you come in, it adds your video up to the upper right here. I want to make sure you choose that H.264. Match source, high bit rate. There's a lot of research that goes in behind this, but just choose these settings right now and they'll work just fine. When you first open Media Encoder, it might take 2 or 3 minutes for everything to open up. So now you get this video where you have your export settings. There's a few things in here we're going to set, and we'll walk you through those. Down here where in the video, you want to just double check to make sure everything is what you want. We're going to click render at maximum depth. We're going to do a 2-pass VBR, and then we're going to set the bit rates. Set the first one at 4. I have more description on the website on what these are too, and the second one at 6. And make sure we also use maximum render quality as well, and that's down here at the bottom. Right there. So like I say, just follow those settings. If you want to do a little more research, you certainly can. But you can play through this and see how it looks. Otherwise, just click OK, and we'll go back into the kind of the render queue. You have all of those set up. And then all you need to do is click the little green arrow, and it is going to render your video. And this turns it into, the way I have the settings set up, into an MP4, which is a very, very popular, common, high-quality size that you can upload to YouTube, and you can also upload it to all your social media outlets as well, Facebook. So it didn't take real long. It's only a 30-second video. So to render that and make the MP4 file, that's all it took. The reason that they have the media encoder as a standalone, it wasn't always so, but sometimes you can render a video and it might take 30 minutes. So while that's doing it in the background, you can go back and work. So basically now I go back into where I rendered it, and you have a little folder in there. And in that folder is your comp 1. I usually name it outside of it. You can name it inside of it when you're doing the media encoder if you want. But now I'm just going to name my MP4 video. And that's it. Now you have your video. If you click on it once and hit your space bar, it'll play like this, and you can see it actually in real time. You can see the quality is superb, very crisp and detailed. Stick around for the next video. I forgot to add the sound in this, so I have a separate video to show you how to do that.